Hey, Derek, welcome to the program. First takeaways from the numbers so far, because I think that the whole cycle started here with people not sure if voters would be energized and showing up. Man, these early voting numbers really proved that wrong.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me for start. It's one of those things where we kind of wondered if Republican primary voters were going to wait until election day to vote, and that doesn't seem to be the case. We had a significant portion of them show up during early voting, and they've built quite an advantage over voters that have previous Democratic primary history.
So a lot of candidates and campaigns are wondering, where are the Democrats? Because the people with voters with a Republican voting history have shown up hundreds of thousands of more times than the Democrats have.
Yeah, there does seem to be an enthusiasm level amongst the Republican voters that isn't necessarily matched by the Democratic primary voters. So, with election day just a few days away, I think we kind of have to wait and see if they truly are energized and they just decided to wait till election day to vote.
One person I was talking to on the Republican side was telling me, listen, you can't read too much into the numbers because some of these people with Republican voting histories might be splitting their ticket. Any way to determine that at this point, or do we need to wait to 7 o'clock or 7:01 on Tuesday night?
Yeah, so I think that typically 95% of the people that vote in a primary end up voting for that party's candidates come November, unless you've got the money to call it and poll some of these people. I think that we do have to wait until election night to see if they are in fact voting for their party's candidates. And it's one of those things where you can look back to say the 2018 cycle. There were a significant number of voters in the state that voted for O'Rourke at the top of the ticket in the Senate race, and then voted for Governor Abbott in the governor's race. So we have to wait till election night to see if that possibly happens again.
Derek, what do we know about the people that have no voting history that have voted so far in the election?
That's a significant number of voters that, I'd say we're at about 10% of the people who have voted have no primary history, haven't voted in a previous November election here in Texas. So that's the people who are moving into Texas from other parts of the state or other parts of the country. It's your first time registrants. They just turned 18, 19, that age range. So again, it's one of those things where we have to wait until election night to see how those people end up voting.
With 10% of the vote with no history, I mean, that could throw things in flux a little bit, even though most new voters and independent voters kind of still fall by the same guidelines that the rest of them do, right? Just slightly leaning to the right.
Absolutely. And I think there's this narrative that people moving to Texas are, heavily, to the left on the political spectrum. And, that isn't always the case. I'd make the argument that the people who are moving to Texas are probably either center or just right of center, and they're moving here, not necessarily because of politics, but there are political factors involved in them coming to Texas.
You found that hardcore Republicans and hardcore Democrats are enthusiastic about the election. They are showing up, but the occasional voters are not that enthusiastic. Any idea why?
It's a good question. I think for starters, Donald Trump in the past has talked about early voting as, maybe not the most ideal type of voting. And, he preferred to see people vote on election day. And, that he his campaigns changed that tune here recently to push people to vote early. But, there's still the possibility that some of the Republicans are just waiting till election day because they think their vote's going to be more secure on election day.
Older voters have shown up and they continuously show up and vote in every election. What do we know about the younger voters so far with early voting turnout in Texas?
So voters age 18 to 29, really, they're only making up about 12% of all of the votes that were cast during early voting. That's actually down compared to where it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, they made up about 14, 15% of all the votes that have been cast. And this is an age group that's they're in school, they're new professionals, so the maybe new families, they may not necessarily have the time to go vote early, so maybe they'll show up on election day.
That's probably bad news for Democrats, right? Though, because most of these younger voters traditionally vote to the left.
That's definitely a group that Democrats want to turn out in heavier numbers, and right now they don't seem to be doing that, at least here in Texas.
It, Derek, any idea how much of the early vote is going to make up the total vote come election night? When 7:01 when they release these numbers, how much of the total vote are we going to see there at 7 o'clock?
I've seen some people say that early vote's going to be 85% of all of the votes cast. I think that's a little too high. My guess is probably somewhere in the range of 75% from early voting, 25% from election day, somewhere in that range.
That's a huge number, though. Has it been that high in the past?
No, it's you hate to compare anything to 2020, but in 2020, the early vote in mail was pretty close to about 85% of all of the votes cast. But again, that was such a unique year that it's hard to really compare what's going to happen this year to what happened 4 years ago.
Election night, Tuesday night. What are you going to be watching for?
So at least here in Texas, there are a few counties around the state that I want to watch. Tarrant County, the Fort Worth area, is one of them. This is a county that Trump lost in 2020, but Cornyn won. In 2018, Cruz lost the county. So, of the five largest counties in the state, that's the one that Republicans still have a shot of winning. So I'll be watching the margins there, as well as some suburban counties around the state, like Williamson County, just north of Austin, Fort Bend County, just southwest of the Houston area. Just if the Democrats are going to win statewide, they're going to have to win these counties outright with significant numbers, or at least keep it competitive in order to give themselves a shot.
Derek, last question here. You've analyzed Texas voting trends for years now. How do you think the 2024 election is going to stack up to the previous ones?
Right now, I think that we're looking at probably election results that we've seen for decades now. I think that the Republican statewide candidates are going to sweep. For I guess this is maybe the 30 straight years now. I think the main question is how close of an election is it? And right now I'd say it's probably 3 to 4%, per, 3 or 4 percentage points for the Republicans over Democrats, at least statewide.
And is that like for well, let me ask you this. Colin Allred, Ted Cruz is the biggest race on the ballot here in Texas. Any predictions about what we might see there on election night?
I think that it's probably going to be 9, 10, and 11 o'clock before anybody's really comfortable with saying that Ted Cruz has won the race. But again, I think it's going to be probably a 3 or 4 percentage point race.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you again a different way too. Will the U.S. Senate race be as tight as the polls have shown?
No, I don't think so, and I don't think we're going to see anything as close as we did in Senator Cruz's last election in 2018. I think that it's going to be a little bit larger of a win for him than it was 6 years ago.
I want to ask you about the presidential race as well. for the past few cycles on the presidential side, the Republican wins have been trending downwards. The Democrats have been trending up. Biden lost by 5 points in 2020. Is that going to continue this intersection here? Do you think that they've reached a ceiling or reached a floor?
I think that the percentage, at least when Trump's involved, it has kind of plateaued. You have to wonder, who is a voter that didn't vote in 2016 and 2020 that is going to show up now that's going to make the difference. Apart from the people who have moved here from other states or the younger voters. I feel like everybody's had their chance to put in their 2 cents in having Trump on the ballot. So, I think the percentage points are going to be roughly similar to what they have been.
Derek, keep up the great work. I hope you get some sleep, man.
Awesome. Appreciate it.